Hi, my name is Nate Lucas, and I'm your host for the Kentucky Kernel Sports Podcast, the University of Kentucky's very own award-winning student-led newspaper. Football is back, more specifically college football, and UK has kicked off its season with a win. Today, I'll talk in depth about the win with a couple of special guests and also preview the Cats' next game against the Kernels of Eastern Kentucky University. All opinions expressed on this podcast are the guest's own and my own and do not represent the Kernel's opinions. All right, let's go. Hey, everybody. Thank you all for taking the time to come on the podcast today. Could you all quickly introduce yourselves and tell me your position at the Kernel?
I'm Aiden Paris. I'm a junior here at UK, and I'm just a reporter. I'm not on staff here, but I'll write sports kind of stuff for the sports desk. I mainly like basketball and football.
I'm Colton Johnson. I'm a senior, and I'm in the same position as Aiden. I'm just a sports reporter.
My name is Sarah Gibson, and I'm also a sports reporter for the Kernel.
All right, so Aiden, my first question is for you. Is Devin Leary everything that was promised to Kentucky fans?
It's a little difficult to give like a really clear answer after a week one performance, against a team like Ball State. We haven't really gotten into the thick of the season against like SEC opponents yet, but from what I did see from him, I was actually pleasantly surprised. I feel like he played very calm in the pocket, and a lot of the decisions that he made, whether they were good ones or bad ones, he made with purpose. And I feel like, those years at NC State and that offseason that he's had now fully with Liam Cohen, who, came back from an NFL now offense, who has that kind of seasoning to him, I feel like that maturity is really showing for Devin Leary.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like this is a really calm guy that can support Kentucky's really important and really talented wide receivers, skill room. And I feel like he's very risk-averse, only one interception on that fourth down. And what do you guys think? Do you guys agree? Is Devin Leary everything that was promised to Kentucky fans? What's your all's opinions on him so far?
It's kind of the same thing that Aiden said. I mean, it's really too early to tell. I mean, he's kind of struggled when he wanted to stretch the ball down the field. I mean, he couldn't really in the check down game and RPO, I mean, he was very good. And then on the interception that you were talking about, in the presser after, Cohen kind of took blame for that one. It was kind of forced. Probably really shouldn't have done that, but
yeah, you got to force things on fourth down, though. It's do or die right there, and we were going to turn the ball over and maybe actually give him a couple yards if that pass was incomplete.
I was a little disappointed in the first game. I didn't think his accuracy was where it needed to be. 58% could be better, especially upcoming games, playing SEC opponents. You got to be better there. But other than that, for a first game, I thought he looked pretty well in the pocket when pressure was coming on. He maneuvered pretty well, I thought. I'm excited to see where he takes the team.
Yeah, for sure. So, Sarah, my question is for you this time. How big of a deal is the injury to Kenneth Horsey, and how well do you think that the Kentucky offensive line played last game?
I think it's a major improvement from last year. Going from 47 sacks last year to just 1 in the first game is fantastic. Injury to Kenneth Horsey, I think, will be a big deal, but thankfully it's not season-ending. They came out today, I think, and said it's just going to be a few weeks. Freshman that filled in for him, he's a walk-in, Dylan Ray. He did okay. I think that he can hold it down until Horsey comes back, but I'm excited to see this offensive line. They've definitely improved.
Yeah, for sure. What did you all think about the offensive line? Did you all like the performance? Did you dislike it? What did you think?
well, I mean, in the first half, you didn't see a lot of Cardinal pass rushers in the backfield. So there were a couple plays where he had to work his way out, where Leary had to work his way out of stuff, and even after the Horsey injury, I mean, they were pretty solid the whole game.
Yeah, I definitely feel like you could tell a difference once you got into the second half, and I feel like that was a common theme throughout, not just for the offensive line, but for everything and all aspects of the team. You could really just kind of see the team settle in, and I feel like it was much better after the second half.
Yeah. So, Colton, this question's for you. What do you think that we can expect from this defense going forward? They had a dominant performance. They almost had 2 defensive touchdowns. Do you think that we can keep expecting this level of turnovers?
Man, with the way that front seven goes to the quarterback, it's pretty ridiculous. I mean, expect at least some quarterback mistakes. I'm not sure. I mean, Afari, that corner, he is an amazing hitter. I mean, you saw that fumble that he forced, and with Jalen Geiger getting that fumble recovery, taking it back, it was really good for him. You know, he got hurt and missed a lot of last year, and just to see that from him was really nice. But I think they'll have to work on stuff in the secondary. There were a couple times when, you know, they would get beat on some one-on-one plays, but that's always, you know, catered towards the receiver when, you know, you put a guy on an island outside. But I thought for the most part they were pretty solid, and I expect a lot from them in the future.
Yeah. Is there anything that stood out about the defense for y'all?
Well, as Colton already said, I thought that the front seven looked really, really good the whole game, especially Trevin Wallace and Deion Walker. Deion credited, you know, with stopping the run up the middle. I mean, he's just going to be a force all season long, kind of like a mini Jalen Carter kind of player for us. And Trevin Wallace looked amazing. And more than anything, I think as a unit, I was really, really proud of the DBs, like you already mentioned, Afari. And I just feel like we did a lot of good work in the offseason preparing, because it felt like, you know, our front seven has always been pretty solid through the years, but I feel like we were still capable of getting, you know, shelled out sometimes by the bigger, like, higher scoring teams like, you know, the Bamas and Georgias. And I feel a little bit more comfortable about where we are this year.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like a lot of the time what happens with the Kentucky defense is we go up against those big, tall receivers, and then we just kind of get screwed over. We've seen that in a bunch of Tennessee games, in a bunch of games with bigger opponents. So, Sarah, what did you think of the defense on Saturday?
Going back to the DBs, I'm just so excited to watch J.J. Weaver all season. He is so good, man. Following the Devin Leary interception, literally next play or two, he almost picked him off, went right through his hands, and that just got me going and got me excited.
Yeah. So what do y'all think about the amount of transfers on each team? I felt like it was on every single call, every single play, and on the broadcast we'd always see a graphic saying, you know, this guy's a transfer from here, this guy's a transfer from there. What do y'all think about the increase of transfers on a lot of college football teams?
Well, for me personally, the big one that I was a big fan of was Alex Rayner. He's a transfer from, I think, is Georgia Southern.
Yes, Georgia Southern.
But, you know, special teams and especially kicking has kind of been suspect for Kentucky in the past couple of years. So it was really, really nice, you know, to have some faith every time the guy goes up that he's going to put the ball through the uprights. So.
Yeah, I feel like that's definitely been a common theme, especially, you know, watching that game on Saturday. You definitely heard a lot of new names called. There's a bunch of new faces in the locker room, and I feel like that's something that's just being embraced by every team around the country now. Like the portal and NIL and the marketability of players is just becoming so much more relevant, and you know, the game that they're playing is just so much different now. So, yeah.
I think transfers over the next few years and the last few years been very important to building good teams. Will Levis was a transfer. Now we've got Devin Leary at the helm. He's also a transfer. But for me, Ray Davis was the big one this game at least. 2 rushing touchdowns in your debut for Kentucky after absolutely killing us last year. I felt like that was a great get for the coaching staff to go pick up Ray Davis out of that transfer portal.
Yeah, for sure. Kentucky obviously has a really big playability with receivers like Dane Key and Barry and Brown, but how do you think that Kentucky can begin to sustain drives and sustain success on the field?
Well, so you talk about the first drive of the game, opening the drive up with, you know, the first play is a 43-yard pass from Devin Leary to Dane Key. You know, they absolutely were giving the fans everything they wanted, you know, the hype of the offseason, just knowing that we finally got, you know, another stud quarterback after Levis, and, you know, we retained these receivers. But, you know, after that play, you know, the drive started to fizzle out, and that became kind of a common theme for the rest of the first half, and it was kind of difficult for us to get the offense going. Something that I saw later on was Cohen getting a lot more into the quick passing games, like the option plays, to try to make sure that even though he has a veteran quarterback, to make sure that he settles in a little bit more, because it is week 1. And so I thought that they did a little bit more of that, and they were able to get a lot more involved in the second half and able to get it down the field.
I mean, there were a couple times in the first half where, you know, the punter for Ball State was on point in the first half. I mean, there was that one drive where UK started from like their 5 or something like that, and then Ray Davis had like a bigger rush, got him out of there, and it was kind of the same thing that Aiden was talking about. They sizzled out, punted away, and that was, you know, back in the beginning when, at one point when UK was losing. But I did like in the second half where it was more consistent, and there was also a lot more resilience, with when they went down and had their touchdown in the second half, Barry and Brown turned right back around and ran the 99-yard kick return. So it was just nice to see some resilience.
Back to the short yard game and just quick out routes and slants. I think that definitely helped the team in the second half. And first half, inaccuracy was definitely killing us a little bit, and switching up to the short passes. Devin Leary went 10 for 11 in the second half, definitely cleaned things up a bit. I liked where it was going.
Yeah, I could totally see Devin Leary just completely excelling in that short game. And, that might not match up with Dane Key and Barry and Brown just because of their speed and ability. But, I think that if he excels in that short game, it will end up opening long, deep passes, even if that's not his forte necessarily. So with Liam Cohen being a new addition to the coaching staff, do you think that at times maybe he gets a little too cutesy in the red zone? And do you think that Kentucky will improve over the year, or will this be a problem that gets bigger and bigger?
I'm not necessarily worried about us ever getting too flashy, because I feel like we are now approaching a point in the fandom and the hype around this team where we can actually afford to kind of have some of that flash around us. And with a guy like Liam Cohen, who had experience in that quick passing kind of scheme before he even had an NFL job, and then went to a team like the LA Rams that uses it so heavily, only to come back here with weapons that we have now, it feels like it fits. And we kind of saw it work again, in week 1 against Ball State, where, Devin Leary, like we just said, he got going in the second half when he was able to get those quick passes out. And as I had already said before, just looked very, very comfortable in the pocket.
No, I completely agree. In the first half, when the Wildcats would get down in the red zone, it did, especially in the first half, it did seem at times when he was trying to pull out some flashy stuff. There was this one play, they were on the 2-yard line, I think it was 4-yard line, I think it was 3rd and goal, and it was this ludicrous Leary rolling out to the left, everyone else shifting to the right, and it didn't work. But I think he kind of got in his mind okay, probably not now. And then probably when he made that transition into the more efficient, just get the yards, get the first down, move the sticks, get the ball down the field. So.
I know it's cliche, but it's just game 1, week 1. So they still are building lots of chemistry. They're getting to know what it's like playing with each other, getting to know why Liam Cohen is calling the plays he's calling and when. So I think they just need some time. I think these next 2 games against EKU and Akron give them the time to figure things out before we hit, more difficult opponents and SEC opponents. But I think they just need time. Yeah,
I think it was very promising, too, that Devin Leary ended up passing to 7 different receivers. And of those 7, 5 had more than 1 reception. So I think it's promising to know that many players can understand this passing offense and be involved at the same time. And you had plays like when tight end Brendan Bates caught that pass and then went for 30 yards and he was wide open. I can totally see Liam Cohen really excelling at the play calling this year for sure. But with that, let's transition to the Eastern Kentucky game. So, Aiden, if Kentucky doesn't blow out EKU this week like Cincinnati did last week, do you think it's a disappointment?
Not necessarily. I feel like there would be a lot to be said for a dominant run game. I feel like if we can start the season knowing that we have the weapons that we do in Barry and Brown and Dane Key and all the receivers, if we can establish a run game with the O-line firing on all cylinders and Ray Davis having more games like he did in week 1, then that's going to prove really, really useful when we get to those SEC games that are much more grimy and much more hard fought. So that when we do get shelled out, we're still able to drive all the way down the field and get those touchdowns. So I do think that that's going to be a really, really important piece of it.
Yeah. Do you all think that it will be a disappointment if EKU doesn't get blown out?
If you just beat Ball State by 30 and you always have takeaways from games, I just don't. I guess it depends on what the threshold of what a blowout would be. I think beating somebody by 30 is a blowout, but there's a lot to take away from Ball State. So if we go out there and beat them by 56, like the previous opponent just did, that'll probably be a little uplifting, but I don't know.
If they won't say it, I will. It would be a major disappointment if we do not go out there and blow out EKU. They do not stand a chance in this game, in my opinion, especially with their run game against our front seven. If they put up a fight, I will be impressed, but I'm expecting UK to completely blow out the Colonels this weekend.
Yeah, and Sarah, I was watching Emory Jones' performance last week, 5 touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns. I don't think that Devin Leary is going to have that type of stat line. But what do you predict his stat line might look like next week?
I expect him to be a lot more accurate. I'm expecting 250 yards through the air, but I'm more excited to see what our run game's going to be doing against EKU. I'm expecting Ray Davis to go off.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as there's no picks, I'm happy. I mean, there's other ways to score touchdowns. There's only one guy that can throw an interception. So as long as the decision making is there, I mean, and is all methodical, and I have faith in him. I think he's going to do well.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be also my big emphasis for these next few games before we really get into conference play is just smart decision making and making sure that we're settling into the offense right and not making any bad decisions, throwing any bad picks like we did in the first week.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a reality where Devin Leary is extremely serviceable, but maybe UK fans aren't completely content with him just because it feels like 2023 is the year of the QB. We saw so many QBs go off in college football last week, and I think it's going to continue to be that way. And maybe he's not part of that upper echelon of quarterbacks, but we have to remember that, he was the top transfer quarterback last year, and we got the best that we could. So who do you think is going to stand out next week in this EKU game? Where do you think that a component of EKU's game that can be taken advantage of is?
I think the guy we got to look out for is Parker McKinney, their quarterback. He's definitely mobile. He can move around. But other than him, I'm not too worried about EKU.
I'm in the same boat with Sarah. I mean, especially after week 1 when the defenses had time to figure out what does work, what doesn't work. And I think that, especially in the secondary, I think they're going to go in there and handle business. So.
Yeah, I think Ray Davis is my prediction. I feel like he'll probably be like one of the top performers for next week, as he kind of was in this previous week against Ball State. I just feel like against these kinds of teams, before we're getting into the conference play, I feel like we should be able to punish them pretty easily with Ray Davis because he's just dynamic. He's a spark plug.
So can we do a game prediction real quick? Everybody just tell me your scores. Maybe give me a stat line for Devin Leary. Give me a stat line for the defense.
My score prediction is going to be 48 UK, 13 EKU. I think Devin Leary will have his first 300-yard passing game with 2 touchdowns probably. And I think Ray Davis will probably have another rushing touchdown, 100-yard game. As for the defense, Trevin Wallace, another big game. Deion Walker, give him a sack or something and maybe a pick somewhere there.
Yeah, going to hear a lot of the same. I'm also expecting at least 40 points from UK. I'm going to go 41-10. I think the Colonels are going to get a touchdown. You can't play perfect the whole game. But I think it'll be handled pretty well. I also think Trevin Wallace should have a really good game. I'm expecting another double-digit tackle game. Leary, I don't know if he'll get a 300. I expect at least 250, maybe a touchdown or 2, no picks. Ray Davis, I'd love to see another 100-yard rushing game from him.
I'm going to say that Kentucky's defense is going to hold them to less points than what Cincinnati was able to. So I'll go score prediction 60-10. I mean, they got beat pretty bad by Cincy, and I'm pretty confident UK is better than them. And I don't want to predict too many stats, but I'm going to predict that UK offensive player will win SEC Offensive Player of the Week. I feel it coming.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right. Well, listeners, that's about all that we have for the pod today. Thank you all so much for listening. And keep listening, I guess. All right. Bye-bye.